Hackers of Reddit, what are some cool/scary things about our technology that aren't necessarily public knowledge? Serious. Almost all industry computers, think controllers for huge factories, power plants, water reclamation, distance heating, etc., have well-known default passwords or even hard-coded admin accounts. Back in the day, this was not a huge problem because you would run them on private networks with no connection to the internet. Nowadays, the internet is available everywhere and much cheaper than private networks. So many of these industry computers are now reachable from the internet. People that know what they are doing would only make them accessible over a VPN. But there is a very large number of people that shouldn't be allowed anywhere near a keyboard. The fact that wind turbines and power stations are publicly accessible. Link in description. Shodan is a fairly scary company in general. MFW, a tech security company, shares the same name as probably the most diabolical and amazing AI villain of all time. Link in description. You can have the strongest IT system in the world. You can spend billions on software and hardware protection. But if I can ring the new employee called Kathy and say, "Hey, Kathy, you're new here, right? Yeah, it's John from IT Security. There's been a breach and I need size admin password quickly so I can patch it up." "Okay," says Kathy, under stress to fix the problem, and there I have it. I got the password. It's called social engineering, and 9 times out of 10 that's how people hack accounts. I worked at a hospital corporate office, and right after 3 weeks of training I get to go to my actual department for my first real day, confident I know all the computer systems now. Day 2. I get called to the security office because apparently someone using my login and password accessed the systems in the training center after I clocked out. So, I changed all my passwords and entered my passwords on the fucking shared drive because that's the stupid fucking rule, and went to work. Days 3 and 4 were a repeat of day 2. Day 5 they decided to install secret cameras and caught an IT employee sneaking into the training center after accessing my new passwords on the shared drive daily, trying to figure out how to edit an account of a family member to change it to stop a lawsuit. I was chosen because I was new and the only new person with editing power over all systems. We were required to keep our passwords in an unprotected Excel document that only it and management and of course myself would only ever go into if necessary. After that, I kept it updated with fake passwords. We were required to keep our passwords in an unprotected Excel document. That's not even social engineering. That's just people being completely incompetent. People's incompetency is the #2 way of getting into systems, by the way. Those browser warnings about untrusted SSL certificates that everyone automatically bypasses could be an indicator that you're a victim of a man-in-the-middle attack. In other words, your data is being routed through an attacker's system, possibly through an ARP or DNS spoofing attack. By bypassing the warning messages, you have possibly just agreed to trust an attacker-supplied, self-signed SSL certificate. This isn't the case 100% of the time, but definition a reason to pause and scrutinize the warning. Nearly every single Comcast router I've ever tested is vulnerable to a WPS, Wi-Fi protected setup authorization bypass vulnerability. Disable WPS to protect yourself against it. Any asshole can join your WPA2 protected Wi-Fi network in 10 hours or less with zero knowledge of your passphrase. Many office buildings have secure areas that require an ID badge for ingress access. However, when exiting said secure area, a proximity sensor detects the presence of a person on the secure side and unlocks the door without requiring an ID badge. It's possible to abuse the behavior of the proximity sensor on the secure side of the door using a can of compressed air, effectively bypassing the need to have a valid ID badge. Hold the can of compressed air upside down. Place nozzle between door cracks. Aim toward the ceiling, toward the location of the proximity sensor on opposite side of the door. Pull trigger to spray. If the proximity sensor is improperly configured, the door will open as though a person was on the opposite side exiting the secure area. There is a story on /r/Talus from tech support about that door technique, except the pen tester pissed underneath the door with a light on the urine. This was also used on a multi-million-dollar server room, so the tester almost ruined some hardware too. That's flipping hilarious. I'm not sure my clients would appreciate me pissing on their doors as a proof of concept though, haha. Link in description. Any router using web is insecure. Source: using neighbor's Wi-Fi. How? In layman's terms, network. Sorry, you can't get in. You need a password. What's the password? Network. Hunter 2. Every single network maintains something called an ARP table. ARP stands for Address Resolution Protocol. It's basically a table that matches an internal IP address assigned by your router to each local machine to a MAC address, a hardwired ID for every network card on a device, so it knows what machine gets what data. The super scary thing about this is, it is 100% entirely unsecured on nearly every local network. Anyone can write ARP data, even the data for other machines, which means I can tell every single device on the network that my MAC address, and therefore my machine, is the router, which means all data on the network will come to my laptop. Before my laptop sends it to the router, I see literally every piece of data sent or received by every computer in the network. Well written. Thanks for this. And just like that, /u/abermuffin became the next biggest hacker the world had seen. Professional hacker, penetration tester here. I would say the scariest thing I run into on a daily basis is how shoddy in the security sense most of the code out there is. I deal mainly with web applications, and it's amazing some of the things the developers come up with. It might be super fast and functional, but horrible security wise. The number of big development firms that have no security cycle or CAC hooked into their dev cycle is astonishing. The second is just how little understanding in the general public there is about how tech actually works, what it's doing. Everyone uses it for everything, yet there are people out there that are in charge of commerce apps that take your financial data that don't know what a web browser is. I actually think the general population is getting more tech illiterate. As devices have become more user friendly, the level of knowledge required to use them has gone down dramatically. So what we have now is the equivalent of a bunch of toddlers running around with bazookas and not knowing what makes them go boom. Browsing Stack Overflow makes me sad. It's like 90% of developers haven't heard of things like inputs annotation, link in description. Little Bobby tables, link in description. Most hacked account, be it Facebook, mail or other, aren't done by elite nerd typing quickly on a console, but by malicious people who have basic knowledge of computer and exploit other people's stupidity, or by gathering some information. Example, lost password, secret question, what's your favorite food? Most of the time it's pizza. Social engineering. You really aren't going to get anything too scary here, and certainly not in any language an amateur would understand. But here's some info/tips/whatever. 1. You can use a very basic and very old, but still working exploit called ARP spoofing, or ARP poisoning, to intercept any traffic on your LAN, which on something like an office or college network may include hundreds of people. You can use this method to record everything they do on the internet and even extract any usernames and passwords they may use, Facebook, mail, etc. But what about SSL? You use a MEM attack, but won't that throw a cert error? Yes, but most people ignore those. Bottom line is, be careful what you do on public and semi-public office networks and try to just wait until you get home if it's sensitive data. Certainly don't do any banking on the airport/hotel Wi-Fi. 2. The best way to get someone's password is to just ask for it. I really can't believe how many people still refuse to believe this, but administrators will never ever ask for your password. Stop giving that shit out. If you get an email asking for your password, it's always a scam. Always, always, always. No exceptions. Seriously, people. 3. Don't use the same password for anything. Hacker 101 is that once you compromise one account, ideally email, you go through their email notifications to see what other accounts they have. Then you go to those sites and try to log in with the same password. It usually works. Also, you really shouldn't even use the same username for different sites, because if I crack an account other than your email address, I can still just Google your username or try sites I think you might visit. So your Reddit username should not be your Gmail username, and they certainly should not be the same password. 4. You can rather easily build at home a device which intercepts GSM, cell phone data in the area. You can also easily build or buy a device which jams cell phones in the area. I should note that it's a felony to use or possess these. 5. Yes, we can use malware to remotely activate your webcam, microphones, and whatever else is plugged into your computer. Cover the lens when you're not using it. Ditto on cell phones, but there's no much you can do about that short of removing the battery. 6. Everyone should know about ATM skimmers. Google it. Large parts of hacking rely on exploiting the user, not the machine. We'll try to trick you or trap you into doing something stupid. It's much easier and more reliable than trying to actually compromise software. Most penetration testing firms, hackers you pay to test your network security, have a 100% success rate when they're allowed to exploit users. Very true. For 2 and your last paragraph. I teach a very basic info secretary class at a community college. When we talk about social engineering, I have them go out and try to talk people into giving up information about their computers and themselves. I have this one student I'll call Casanova. Well, Casanova puts on some really nice dress clothes, does up some official looking forms, and goes to supermarkets and grocery stores and specifically targets women for this project. He gives them a sob story about his mean teacher and this assignment for keeping computers working, or some BS class, and how he needs this info to pass. This guy is a smooth talker and a flirt, so once he gets them talking and starts flirting with them, he gets whatever he wants. He came back to class with information about their computers, passwords, phone numbers, email addresses, and a couple girls even took selfies with him. He did this to 10 different women to see what results he got. Most students didn't fare too well, but by the end of his presentation I was laughing my ass off, and the other students were just staring in awe. People will always be the easiest part of a computer to exploit. See, this is what I miss in my job. In my job, I'll never be in this situation where I can help someone find their calling in life. It must bring a smile to your face and a warm feeling in your heart. See kids, that hacker guy on the news that brought down the national power grid, I taught him that. He was my student. /u/screamsalvation in 5 years. The internet is built on trust. Internet. Trust. Physical storage doesn't last for as long as people think. CDs and DVDs have a finite lifespan. If you have photos backed up on a disk in the attic from the 90s, they could potentially fail if you ever wanted what was on them. Same thing with USB flash drives and HDDs a decade or two before they fail. This isn't a problem right now, but imagine a world where everything is stored digitally as opposed to hard copy, which also has a finite lifespan. Your grandkids won't have any of your pictures or files, because they will all be gone. Sure, you could do online backups, but even then, how long will that service be around? How many times has a company gone out of business taking its media with them? Buying a new HDD would solve the problem, wouldn't it? Well, yeah, but then you are replacing your storage media every 15 to 20 years. Not a huge problem, but there will be lots of data basically spoiling every year. Everything spoils with enough time. Not honey. Honey is magic. So, we should store all our data in honey? It's usually easier to get information from a person than a computer. All you have to do is find the right way to ask. The social engineering DEFCON talks are always my favorite. The fact that a good number of security holes and spying methods that were around 20 years ago are still vulnerabilities and are around today, to put it in the simplest but not 100% accurate terms. There is little to no meaning in the word privacy when you go online. If I can find it, I'll post the link to a video that really dives into this topic. Holy fuck, 3 hours. Appliances or devices, ovens, link in description, comma, fridges, link in description, comma, thermostats, link in description, comma, door locks, what the hell, link in description, that are network accessible when they normally are not is a problem that is getting worse. The protocols they use to communicate usually have little to no security in mind. The communication API will probably have really powerful functions available in the open and clear. Example, if I have to upgrade the software of my fridge and there is a command used in there to turn off the power, can I just send that command to any fridge of that brand and have it shut off? Giving up security for convenience is always a hard trade for people like me. Sure, being able to set my thermostat from my phone is neat, but do I have to have it talk through a third party, the company that makes it? No way and no thanks. Stop buying dumb devices that can remotely be accessed unless you are very sure it won't burn down your house or cost you tons of money in case of an exploit. 1. Metadata. Almost every consumer device is designed to track the movements and activities of owner. Digital cameras, cell phones, scanners, printers, camcorders, all save files that are stamped with metadata, date, time and serial number of the device. Printers put a tiny encoded serial number in the corner in almost invisible yellow ink. If you post a naked picture to /Gonald and use the same camera to post pictures to Facebook, perps, companies and intelligence agencies can track you by the metadata and use it to build a detailed picture of your life by linking online accounts that may appear separate to the untrained eye. 2. Databases. Online analytical processing, sometimes referred to as big data. This is something not many people, even techies, are fully aware of. The power of databases is extraordinary to merge databases about people. All you need is a common unique identifier. This could be a SSN, a telephone number, an email address, but also something less tangible. like a signature generated from your browser habits, how many people really visit the sites that you do on a daily basis, your browser settings, screen resolution, fonts installed, preferences set, etc. All you need is one common unique identifier to merge two databases containing potentially millions of records about millions of people. There is a huge black market for databases. Hackers steal databases and put them on BitTorrent. Companies go out of business. Often the most valuable asset during liquidation is a customer database. There are companies, agencies and individuals who collect and merge databases in order to harvest marketing info, or simply sell access to it as a service. Almost every time you hear about a data breach, and you are asked to change your password, it's likely that all other information you sent to that company is also in the hands of somebody untrustworthy. Companies often encrypt/hash/solve their password fields. They don't protect user data in the same way as it's not practical for them to do so. 3. Cryptography. People need to learn how to encode their messages to inform themselves about applications that can be trusted channels of communication that use an openly auditable, peer-reviewed process in its development. If these applications don't yet exist, we collectively need to start funding them as basic, simple-to-use tools of communication. 4. Centralized systems. Aka the cloud. Okay, the cloud is a loaded term. It's a buzzword in it with two meanings. One meaning is hosting of server and bandwidth, provided by companies like Amazon, Azure, etc. You are an /developer who has an application in mind for 100 servers, but might not need that many, then this is great. The other meaning of the cloud is when a company asks you to do something that would be normally done on your local PC, on their server. This is a bad fucking thing. What they have done is renamed centralized computing common in the 1970s, where you had to ask an authority for permission to run code, and were only allowed to do what you wanted after receiving approval. This architecture is inherently authoritarian and undermines the power of the user. When Adobe moves Photoshop to the Creative Cloud, they are asking you to trust them to store all your work in progress. If these companies go out of business, or if they upgrade the software, or choose to double the price, you are fucked. You lose access to all your previous work. You can't export or save your files, and you are sharing your files with a third party. Same goes for Dropbox, Office 365, Google Docs, but even things we take for granted, web-based email. If webmail services were secure, why do businesses individually pay for expensive mail servers, software and maintenance? 5. The cost of free. People know this, but have not thought about it deeply enough. The expression "if you're not paying, you're the product" completely rings true. 6. You're paying too much for crap software. With the amount we all pay in software licenses each year for basically the same thing with a few new features and a little window dressing, for a fraction of this, we can fund open source software developments that can be used for more. Did you know that you can use VLC Player to record anything to a file, stream from your webcam to the world, screen cap/stream your desktop? Projects like MediaGoblin let you set up your own YouTube-type media sharing site. Over the past decade, consumer OSs and ISPs have had the server-based features removed so that they can be sold back to us at a premium. General purpose computing, and the promise of the internet is that anyone connected can be a server, can be a service provider, and not just a consumer. If you post a naked picture to /Gonald and use the same camera to post pictures to Facebook, pervs, companies and intelligence agencies can track you by the metadata. It seems like 95% of all images on Reddit are hosted on Imgur, and Imgur strips all metadata from uploaded images. So as long as you upload to Imgur, no one can track you using metadata. Link in description. Link in description. I know I'm a little late to the show here, and it'll get buried, but I'll throw my 2 cents Canadian in the mix. Professional security assessment engineer here, and the scariest things that keep me up at night fall into 2 categories. 1. The amount of security theater perpetrated upon the general public without any backlash towards those that are using it to gain power over the people. There have been several instances like the Patriot Act, and pretty much all of the security at the airport after 9/11, where professionals have proclaimed how shitty these policies are and no one believes them. Side note. If you want to see real security, try flying in or out of Ben Gurion Airport in Israel. There are guards outside with rifles, and will not hesitate to shoot. Then the security guards at the counter have been trained to ask questions about your stay, where you'll be staying, etc. They will then verify your answers with the hotel or friends you're staying with. I have been part of assessments where we were asked to compromise a network or device We performed the assessment and found several significant findings that would allow an attacker to have complete access to the network or device. An example that comes to mind. We were asked to compromise a very popular phone at the time. We spent several months reviewing every facet of how it started up, common applications running on the phone, the operating system, etc. We found several flaws that allowed us to gain complete access to the phone and do whatever we wanted. Those findings didn't become public for almost 18 months. Now who's to say that those flaws weren't used by our government to spy on foreign targets? These are just the targets that we're being paid to assess. There are many exploits known as zero-day exploits that haven't seen the light of day. I'm on a couple of forums that discuss and trade these exploits like baseball cards. The general public has no idea how these things work and just see the heartbleed problem and wonder, should I change my password? IBN. 2 cents Canadian. This confuses me. Also Canadian. Can we even say this anymore? Shouldn't it be rounded to the nearest nickel? If so, then it would buy 0 cents Canadian. So what does that even mean? It means Canadians' opinions are worthless. Open bracket. There is a TEDx talk of a hacker showing you what he can do quite easily. Link in description. Hey, an AskReddit thread that I can actually contribute to. Sweet. I'm a grad student studying cybersecurity. Scary. 1. People have hacked cars and most other forms of transportation. These hacks have included the ability to stop your brakes from working and moving your steering wheel. While the knowledge is currently held by a small group of people, it never stays that way, and I predict that murder by hacking/trolls will be old news before 2022. If the GPS system were to ever fail, just like GLONASS did, the economic damage would easily be in the hundreds of billions as financial institutions depend on GPS for timing. Note that this technology was developed 19 years ago, based on a 41-year-old theory. One misprogrammed counter could bring it all down, if it wasn't caught. 3. Everything from power plants to dams, to oil pipelines still uses SCADA. Link in description. A protocol developed with 1990s-era security practices. These systems are connected to the internet. One worm on the scale of I Love AR built to target these systems would have wide-reaching real-world consequences, including cutting off municipal water supplies. 4. While bug bounty programs are a step in the right direction, from an economic perspective it is orders of magnitude more profitable to sell a zero-day vulnerably on the black market than it is to sell to a company. This means that most software 0 days are being sold and hoarded instead of patched. In practical terms, this means that almost all of the software you use is vulnerable. 6. Taking all of those things together gets us the scariest part of the picture. In the next decade, I predict that there will be a cyber war or a terrorist attack over the internet. People will die, and the economic damage will be equal to, if not greater than, a bombing of a major city. This will provoke a backlash that will fundamentally rewrite the way that we interact with our computers. I cannot even hazard a guess as to what direction that will take, but if Computer Fraud and Abuse Act is anything to go by, it will not be pretty cool. 1. There are open source programs out there that let you build your own software-defined radio. People use them to listen in on satellite communication. 2. CubeSats are almost economically viable for the average person to build and launch one. This means that we could soon see high school science projects that involve launching something into space and talking to it. Think about that for a moment. It's only been 57 years since mankind first put something into orbit, and we have mastered the technology to the point that it is possible for hobbyists to get involved. There are people alive right now who are older than spaceflight. 3. Access to supercomputers is becoming easier and easier. This is changing the face of everything from engineering to art. Soon people will be able to access more computation power than their brain could ever match and use that to create stuff. 4. RepRap exists. Link in description. As a wiki for open source 3D printers made out of, mostly 3D printer parts. In the next decade, I predict that there will be a cyber war or a terrorist attack over the internet. People will die, and the economic damage will be equal to, if not greater than, a bombing of a major city. Just curious, how do you predict people will be killed? I'm just not quite understanding the logistics here. See items #1 through #3. If someone with ill intent could control cars, or mass transit and power plants / other important infrastructure, and the GPS systems that tell an airplane where it is, with enough coordination they could bring down planes, shut off power, crash trains, etc. With the push of a button. All of those scenarios would cause loss of life. The power plant one might be less direct, but without power for long enough, the world turns crazy. I'm basing this off a TV show I heard of. Revolution. The scary part of the computer security world is not China, Russia or any other type of advanced persistent threat, not anonymous, or some disparate group of computer hackers. The number one threat to computer security is people. Social engineering is still the best way to get into almost any system. It cannot be patched. The amount of people who will still run Excel report not a virus.exe is mind-boggling. Most intrusions are done through malicious emails or malware preloaded onto a USB stick that someone drops somewhere. All that stuff that Edward Snowden has leaked. Most good people have known about it for years. It's just that nobody believed us. TLDR version is no one is safe online no matter what. Not sure if this applies, but here's a fun fact. If you pay for a rrobukef package anywhere in the US, your payment goes to an unmarked building in Columbia, South Carolina for processing. There used to be 3 places, but they consolidated them into the one. Source: used to work there. Of all the posts on this thread, this is the one I want to know more about. Backdoors. Programmers have been putting these things in since the early days of software for numerous reasons. In case they aren't paid, boredom, for some illegal purpose down the road, theft, blackmail, etc. What is a backdoor? It is some form of secret access to a program through network usually. This could be implemented by using a non-standard port, non-standard protocol, but is not limited to such. If the programmer who designed the software doesn't use their backdoor, it would likely go unnoticed until it was accessed. What can you do with a backdoor? Anything and everything. It could give the person using the backdoor complete and utter access to every function the program has. Imagine the person who wrote the software to launch a nuclear warhead had that person put a backdoor into that software. Rather than requiring the secure launch protocol, this person could use their backdoor to bypass all authorization and be able to fire a nuke while Obama had his thumb up his ass. This is partially why these particular computer systems, among other essential systems, are not networked. But with the number of disgruntled programmers and the amount of software written thus far, you have to consider that a good chunk of all software has some kind of backdoor. TL. Doctor, if you disrespect your programmer, they may F you in the backdoor. I'm a computer scientist with security knowledge, so I'm not a hacker per se. There is a decent chance that the US government will break modern encryption as we know it in the next decade. Currently the government, namely the CIA and NSA, are some of the largest employers of mathematicians. The NSA has one of the largest data centers ever built by man. It is speculated that they are nearing a breakthrough and are getting ready to use it. Modern encryption is based on the fact it is really hard to find the prime factors of a number in a recessional amount of time, but extremely easy to make a large number with prime factors. If a way is found to quickly find prime factors, the whole system is fucked. Quantum computers will do this if they turn out to be possible. Perhaps they are banking on that, or perhaps they found some other way. Honestly, this scares the shit out of me more than anything else. Given their data capacity, they are probably already storing all the encrypted data they can find, and waiting for the day they can decrypt it. It's likely that the CIA and NSA are at least a decade ahead of academic research in cryptography. Link in description. In the mid-70s, IBM submitted an encryption standard to the National Bureau of Standards for encrypting sensitive documents. The NBS scrutinized it, thought it was good, and sent it off to the NSA for comments. The experts at NSA looked at it and recommended some mysterious tweaks that befuddled some of the leading academics at the time. Some of the tweaks, like the short and key length and S boxes, looked suspiciously like security holes that the NSA could plug into and decrypt messages at will. The Senate reviewed it and deemed it acceptable, and so it served as the encryption standard from then on. In 1990, 15 years after the proposals from NSA, academics published a technique known as differential cryptanalysis to break block ciphers. Turns out that those mysterious recommendations from the NSA back in the 70s were engineering specifically to resist attacks based on differential cryptanalysis. The data encryption standard didn't have any defenses against linear cryptanalysis, however, which was discovered 2 years later. One must imagine that the NSA most likely knew about the technique in the early 80s as well. This puts the NSA at about a 15-year advance over the academic community, so I wouldn't be surprised if the NSA has currently discovered new techniques that won't be publicly known until 2030. As technology accelerates, it becomes harder and harder to stay ahead. While it's interesting to look at recent history for comparison, it seems odd to extrapolate that out without taking account of everything leaked by Snowden. Any DEFCON video, a lot are available on YouTube. GPS can be spoofed, faked, you can override the GPS signal with hardware of $1,000. This can be used to move the position of a GPS receiver to something else. Like say, an airplane is 1,000 foot higher than it actually is. Combine this with a autopilot and a biplane. This can also be used with boats. Air traffic control can be spoofed too. With $1,500 of equipment you can create your own virtual airplane on the screens at an airport. Create 10 fake airplanes and you will have a Where is Waldo game with planes. You can even make them crash. Even autopilot will react to avoid crashing into the ghosts. Let's just say that I'm very happy I don't have to fly often and there are enough planes that I'm unlikely to be on one specific airplane. Source, link in description. Alright, what have you done with MH370? Thanks for giving CNN another week's worth of news.